My name is Margaret Hayes. I'm 58 years old, a retired intelligence officer. I served over 3 decades in uniform. But nothing prepared me for the moment my sister said this. You're nothing. Not to me, not to anyone. Get out. She slammed the door in my face, locked it from the inside, and just like that, I was no longer welcome in the home I grew up in. I stood there in full uniform, 2 bags at my feet, looking at the front porch like it belonged to someone else. No one opened the door. Not my mother, not my father. No voice said my name. No light turned on. That night, I slept in my car, parked 2 streets away, because I couldn't bear to see the windows glowing warm behind the trees. I had nowhere to go, no one to call, and somehow that silence hurt more than war ever did. But the next morning, my phone lit up. A name I didn't expect. Colonel Susan Whitmore, my sister's commanding officer. She said 7 words. I still remember word for word, Major Hayes. I believe we need to talk. If you've ever felt like the people closest to you turned their backs the moment you needed them most, if you've ever stood outside a door that was once yours and felt like a stranger, then stay with me. This story is yours too. And if something in this already speaks to you, leave a like and subscribe. That way I know I'm not the only one. I didn't cry that night. I thought I would, but I didn't. Grief when it's old doesn't come in waves. It settles like dust, quiet, heavy, permanent. The motel was nothing special. Peeling paint, flickering lights, a polyester bedspread that smelled like old cleaning supplies. But it was a roof, and it didn't shut me out. Room 208 creaked when I walked in. The heater groaned like it had its own complaints. I hung my uniform jacket on the only chair. Sat at the edge of the bed, hands still trembling. Not from cold, from something deeper, the kind of hurt that doesn't scream. It just lingers. I opened my laptop just to distract myself. An email popped up. Bank notification, joint account activity. Almost $900 withdrawn that morning. Authorized by Helen Hayes, my mother. I stared at the screen, closed the lid slowly. I wasn't just forgotten. I was being erased, my name removed, my presence ignored, my money taken. All while my sister sat warm in the house that used to be mine. And suddenly it was all clear. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a decision. They didn't want me back. They never did. Segment 340. The lock wasn't just a lock. The next morning I drove back. Not because I expected warmth, but because a part of me still hoped. Hope is slow to die even when it's been starved. The house looked the same. Cedar siding, yellowing trees, same front steps. But the windows, they didn't shine anymore. They just stared back, blank cold, unreadable. I climbed the porch slowly, boots heavy not from weight but from memory. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a key I hadn't used in over 10 years. It didn't fit. I turned it again, still nothing. The lock was new, smooth, shiny, recently installed. I crouched down, stared at it for a moment, then my phone buzzed. A message from Victoria. You're nothing to this family. Don't come back. I didn't knock. I pounded. Once, twice. The third time I leaned toward the curtain. She was inside, calm, composed, at the dining table. Military files were spread in front of her. She didn't look up. She didn't need to. She knew I'd come and she didn't care. I called her, straight to voicemail. Then my mother, then my father. No answer. No sound, just the cold echo of absence. I stood on that porch for 5 more minutes. Longer, maybe. Then I walked away. No destination, just distance. I ended up at a motel near the old airbase, the kind of place that didn't ask questions. Faded sign, cracked pavement walls, thin enough to hear your neighbors breathing. Room 208 again. Same hum of the heater, same scratchy sheets, same kind of silence. I sat on the edge of the bed, laptop still closed, mine, running in circles. No messages, no calls, no one wondering where I was, no one missing me, just me and that kind of quiet that bruises from the inside. I thought about the attic. I'd asked Victoria weeks ago if I could stay there just until reassignment. She said yes, but only one word temporarily. She didn't say welcome. No one did. I paid for the utilities. I kept out of the way. I stayed upstairs. I stayed small. I didn't join for dinner. I didn't speak unless spoken to. I tried to be easy to ignore because that's what they seemed to want. But no matter how much space I gave, I was still treated like an outsider. A squatter in my own childhood home. A ghost in a place that once had my name on the walls. Victoria set curfews like I was a teenager. Helen left reminders everywhere. If you're not helping with the business, stay out of the way. George, my father said nothing. Ever. Each night I came home to silence. Each morning I woke up a little less real, and somehow they didn't have to say it out loud. I knew I wasn't family anymore. Evenings were the hardest. Victoria held court at the dinner table, confident, polished, always in control. Mom and Dad nodded like background music. They talked investments, business strategies, command updates. They never asked for my thoughts, never even glanced in my direction. I became wallpaper, peeling at the corners, fading under years of silence, still technically there but never really seen. One night, I came home from base with a printed proposal under my arm, Iron Mind, a program I'd built for returning soldiers. I'd worked on it for months, quietly, carefully. I handed it to Victoria at dinner. She didn't even pause her fork, just glanced, smirked, and said, "Still playing therapist for broken troops? Adorable." I excused myself, didn't even finish my glass of water. Upstairs in the attic, I sat on the floor, hands on cold wood. I stared at the storage wall. Boxes I hadn't touched since I moved in. Old memories sealed in cardboard. But something that night pulled me toward them. Behind a faded painting, my fingers brushed against something taped to the wood. An envelope. Yellowed, fragile, marked in handwriting I knew. Dorothy's, dated 1998. It had my name on it. And when I opened it, her voice came back to me through paper, through time, through love that never stopped. "If you're reading this," she wrote, "you've lived long enough to know that kindness isn't weakness. You are the flame they'll never put out, Maggie." And for the first time in weeks, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, someone had seen the real me and hadn't looked away. 2 days later, I came downstairs early. Victoria had left her laptop open on the kitchen table. Screen still glowing, email half-typed, cursor blinking like a pulse. I didn't mean to read it. But something in me paused, something that knew deep down this wasn't just a careless moment. "Rachel won't hold up," it read. "We just need to apply the pressure at the right time. No greeting, no context, just strategy. Cold, calculated." I closed the screen, stood still in the quiet kitchen. Coffee still brewing, sunlight crawling across the tile like nothing had happened. That afternoon, I went to the bank to change my address, to protect what little I had left. The clerk frowned at the screen. "You're listed under temporary occupancy," she said. "The house belongs to a trust. Lauren Hayes is listed as primary." I stared at her, heart thudding in my throat. I hadn't just been removed, I'd been repositioned. Legally, emotionally, financially, I was being erased in real time. Every detail planned, every signature forged, every move disguised as formality. They weren't just done with me, they were cashing me out, and I was running out of time to stop them. At Malmstrom, I had always led quietly. Data analysis, intel briefs, threat assessments. I never needed a spotlight, just the work, just the truth. But that week, something cracked. A text from Ed Grayson lit up my phone. "Lauren presented your comms breach report in briefing. No credit." I read it twice. Then a third time. I'd stayed up nights building that report. Every protocol, every line checked. Even the footnote misspelled redundancy, I remembered leaving it there by accident. And now it was hers. Her words, her win. While I sat alone, barely existing in my own name, I drove straight home. Didn't even take off my boots. Found her in the kitchen, wine in hand. Mom peeling carrots beside her. "Did you present my report?" I asked. My voice didn't shake, but my hands did. Victoria didn't blink. "It's not yours. It's just information. Anyone could have written it." Mom sighed. "Maggie, must everything be a fight with you?" I turned to my father. He didn't even look up. That night, I gave her Iron Mind. One last olive branch. One last try. She skimmed it, set it down, smiled. Who would ever listen to you? And just like that, whatever softness I had left hardened into something else. I didn't sleep that night. Her words echoed long after the lights went out. Who would ever listen to you? They weren't just cruel. They were rehearsed. I sat alone in the attic, wrapped in silence, surrounded by old dust and boxes. I'd avoided digging into the past. But something inside me shifted. I moved the painting again. Same place, same crack in the wood, and behind it I found the envelope. Dorothy's handwriting, slanted, steady, certain. The paper felt older than I remembered, but the words hit like fresh truth. If they've turned against you, she wrote, remember this, their silence isn't proof of your worth, only of their fear. You were never invisible, just inconvenient. I held the letter to my chest, eyes closed, not crying, just breathing, as if her voice could still hold me together. She had known, she'd seen it coming, and still she'd believed in me when no one else ever did. That belief, it lit something inside me, not fire, not yet, but the first spark of it. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen. Victoria's laptop was open again, but this time I didn't touch it. I'd seen enough. I focused on what I could control. Called the bank, froze old accounts, updated my address. Step by step, I pulled myself out of their reach, but truth has a way of surfacing. The clerk paused mid-keystroke. The trust isn't under Victoria's name, she said. It was originally filed by Dorothy Hayes. For you. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Just nodded, took the papers, and left before my hands gave me away. Later that day, I tried the house again. The lock didn't budge. There was a note taped to the door. Victoria's handwriting, sharp, slanted. Your belongings are in the shed. Please remove them by Saturday. I tried the key anyway. It didn't fit. Not even close. I stood on that porch for the last time, then walked around the side gate. It creaked like it always did, but this time it sounded unfamiliar. Smoke drifted up from the fire pit. Victoria stood over the flames, papers in her hand, tossing them in one by one. I stepped closer. One page caught my eye, my handwriting. Old reports, personal letters, even a folder marked with Dorothy's initials. You're burning my past, I said. She didn't turn, didn't speak, just kept feeding the fire. I stood there frozen, smoke curling into the sky, the scent of ash ink and something older memories turning to cinders. She burned without hesitation. My letters, my drafts, a manila envelope I hadn't seen in years, Dorothy's name disappearing in flame. I called out again. Those were mine. Still no reply, only the crackle of fire and silence thick as stone. I pulled out my phone, tried calling Helen, tried George, no answer, only voicemail cold and short. Dad picked up once. 3 rings, a click, hung up without a word. Even that rejection didn't surprise me anymore. I walked back to the car, sat in the driver's seat, keys in hand but no destination, just the hum of betrayal under my skin. I didn't cry. Not out of strength, but because there was nothing left to spill. Grief had hardened into something else. Something colder. Not hate, not yet, but the first shape of it, forming in silence behind my ribs. That night, my phone buzzed. A message from Millie Johnson, our old neighbor. Rachel, I saw someone with Victoria last night. Not from around here. And then, be careful. Something's not right. I replied right away. Who was it? What did you see? No answer. Just the little dots. Then nothing. Minutes passed. Then her next message came. I've seen this before. The look, the plan, the silence before something breaks. Just be careful. I stared at the screen, heart pacing like it knew more than I did. Millie wasn't dramatic. She was observant, steady, trusted. I tried to shake it off, tried to focus on facts, not feelings. But something about her tone, it stayed with me. Later that day, I met Frank at the cafe. We hadn't spoken in over a year. Still he came. Eyes heavy, shoulders tense. He didn't sugarcoat it. Victoria's been meeting with a lawyer, trying to prove you've got no legal claim to anything. Not the house, not the trust. He paused as if choosing his words. Then he said it. She told them, you're unstable. A burden, holding the family back. I gripped my coffee to steady my hands. Watched the cream swirl, unfurl, disappear. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't about property anymore. It was about erasure. Complete, deliberate, permanent, and I wasn't going to let it happen. That night, I returned to the motel. The hallway smelled like bleach and old carpet. Room 208 again. Same dim light, same 4 walls watching me disappear. Out of habit, I opened Instagram. I hadn't in weeks. Didn't expect much. But something pushed me to look. The top of my feed stopped me cold. A photo, Victoria, Helen, and George. Dinner table, Candles lit, wine poured, laughter frozen in pixels, the caption, family night, nothing better than being together. I stared at it blinking like maybe I'd missed something. But no, I lived in the same town, breathed the same air, yet I wasn't in that frame, not even in their idea of family. Not mentioned, not remembered, not welcome. The house, the table, the name, none of it belonged to me anymore. I set the phone down, let the silence stretch. Then for the first time, I whispered it out loud. I don't have a family anymore. And in saying it, something inside me stopped waiting for their love, for their change, for anything that wasn't real. Monday came with cold that sank into my bones. I sat by the window, typing slowly, carefully, a formal complaint against Victoria for misconduct. I didn't feel brave. I felt tired. But tired people still deserve truth, still deserve to be heard. Then it happened. An email, new sender, subject line, The Evelyn Hayes Trust, confidential, from Colonel Susan Whitmore. I opened it hands cold. The message was brief. Major Hayes, please meet me regarding your standing as beneficiary. This concerns property and protected funds in your name. My breath caught. I whispered to no one. What property? What funds? I had no idea what she meant, but Dorothy had. She'd planned this, hidden it, protected it, because she knew they'd come for me. I drove to the base in silence. Colonel Whitmore's office was sharp spare, one photo on the wall mountains, cold and clear like the truth she carried. She didn't waste time. Just said, Evelyn left a trust in your name. The house, the funds. They were meant to support your military career, no one else. My hands shook, not from shock, but from the sudden shift in weight. For the first time, I wasn't defenseless. She handed me a file, receipts, signatures, timelines. Helen and Victoria had spent almost everything on themselves. And still, there was one more thing, a thin envelope, sealed. Colonel Whitmore placed it gently on the desk. Dorothy left this. She said to give it to you if things ever got dark, and things had never been darker. I held the envelope like it might vanish, Dorothy's handwriting, still firm, still hers, the seal unbroken. 17 years of silence pressed into one thin fold. I opened it slowly. The paper trembled in my hands, not from age, but from everything it remembered before I even began to read. If you're reading this, Maggie, it began, then the family has lost its way. The trust is your shield. The house is yours. The money is for your service, not their comfort. I blinked, tried to breathe. The words didn't just land. They settled like truth returning home. I wanted to believe they'd do the right thing, she wrote. But if they haven't stand your ground, don't let them erase what I left for you. I pressed the letter to my chest, not for warmth, but for weight. For what it meant to be seen finally without condition. Colonel Whitmore watched me quietly, then her tone shifted. There's something else you need to know. Her voice dropped firm and careful. Victoria has a pattern. When challenged, she strikes fast. She's filed false claims against others before. If she sees you as a threat, her pause said enough. I nodded slowly, my voice barely above a whisper. She won't attack my record. She'll go for my name. And that was the moment I knew this wasn't just a family fight anymore. It was war. I left the office carrying more than files. In my coat pocket, a USB filled with evidence. Documents, receipts, letters, and a video, all proof of the fight ahead. I wasn't afraid. Not really. What I felt was something colder, clearer, sharper. They wanted to erase me, to make me disappear quietly. But I had something they didn't, truth, and I planned to use it. Back at the motel, the room felt colder than usual. The heater wheezed its tired song, but the chill wasn't from the draft. It was in my bones. I plugged the USB into my laptop, opened the folder labeled Evelyn Trust. Inside, letters, scanned notes, and a video clip named simply for Margaret. I clicked play. Dorothy's voice filled the room, steady, calm, fierce. A message from the past, a battle cry for the future. Serve with your heart, she said, but protect it with law, grit, and intelligence. Her words wrapped around me a shield and a sword. The screen went dark, and I knew the fight had just begun. 2 days later, it happened. I was called into the internal security office. The memo was cold, formal, and sharp. A complaint had been filed against me. The accusation, unauthorized data extraction, mishandling sensitive documents. Serious charges for someone like me. I sat in that sterile room, heart pounding, breath steady. I asked quietly, "Who filed the complaint?" The officer hesitated. "Anonymous, ma'am." But the wording matched internal memos written by Victoria Hayes. The walls seemed to close in. The air grew thin. They were trying to silence me, but I refused to be quiet. I clenched my jaw and said nothing. Because if they wanted fear, they wouldn't get it from me. Not now, not ever. I walked out of that office determined. Ed was waiting for me that night, laptop in hand, eyes sharp. He'd been watching quietly, carefully. "She's setting you up," he said. He handed me a flash drive. "Files, Victoria, sent to Captain Norris last month, plans to discredit me if I became a problem." I opened the files, her voice cold and casual, threatening to label me unfit. It was all there, recorded, undeniable. But there was more. Deeds filed to transfer the family cabin to a private developer without my consent. An $820,000 deal moving fast behind my back. Ed pointed out the trust's lock clause. It triggered when I filed my first challenge. The property was frozen. Victoria couldn't legally sell it. For the first time in weeks, I felt a fragile hope. A chance to fight back. A reason to believe I wasn't alone. The next day, I presented Iron Mind to a senior officer. He nodded slowly, impressed. Asked for a full proposal. I promised to deliver it by week's end. Driving home, fragile hope warmed me. Maybe after all this, everything wasn't for nothing. But as I pulled into the driveway, the lock caught my eye again. A note taped to the door, sharp and cold. "Your belongings are in the shed. Please remove them by Saturday." Signed, Victoria Hayes. I tried the key once more. Still no fit, no welcome, no home. A text followed seconds later. "I don't want to see you here ever again." My heart didn't drop. It cracked quietly like frost splitting wood, and I knew the battle had only just begun. I knocked on the door once more. No footsteps, no sound, no rustle. The curtains stayed closed tight. The house was silent, a fortress against me. I walked around back. The familiar creak of the gate felt strange now. Smoke curled from the fire pit. Victoria stood there, tossing papers into the flames. I stepped closer. One page caught my eye, my handwriting. Reports, letters, even Dorothy's initials. All burning. "You're destroying my past," I called out. She didn't turn, didn't speak, just fed the fire. I tried calling her again, then Mom, then Dad, all dead ends. Voicemails, hang-ups, they'd chosen her. I returned to my car, sat in silence, no tears, no curses, just the weight of loss settling in. That night, my phone pinged. A message from Millie Johnson, our neighbor since childhood. Quiet, watchful, always there. "I saw someone at the house last night," she wrote. "With Victoria. Not from around here. Be careful. Something's not right." I replied immediately. No answer came back. Only silence filled the room. Minutes later, she messaged again. "This isn't just family drama. It's bigger than you know. Watch your back." Her words unsettled me deeply. Millie didn't speak lightly. Her warnings carried weight, and I knew I had to be alert. The next day, I met Frank at the cafe. We hadn't spoken in over a year, but he showed up worried, tense, serious. Segment 2140, A Family Divided. Frank's voice was low, almost apologetic. "Victoria's meeting with a lawyer," he said. "Trying to strip you of any claim, not just the house, not the trust." He paused, searching my eyes, then added quietly, "She called you unstable, a burden. Said you're holding the family back." I gripped my coffee cup tighter. The warmth didn't reach my hands. I realized then this was no longer about property. It was about power, control, and about erasing me from every part of their world, every place I once belonged, every memory I once held dear. But I refused to vanish. I refused to be erased. And I was ready to fight, no matter the cost. Monday morning came with a chill that settled deep into my bones. I sat by the window, drafting a formal complaint against Victoria. My hands trembled slightly, but I kept typing. This was my stand, quiet, firm, the only way left to be heard. I wasn't hopeful. I was exhausted. But even in the silence, truth needed a voice. Then an email arrived. The sender was new. Subject: confidential meeting request from Colonel Susan Whitmore. The message was brief, urgent, and clear. "Major Hayes, your presence is required. We need to discuss your status as beneficiary of the Evelyn Hayes Trust." My breath caught. The fight was no longer just mine. It had become something bigger. I drove to the base in silence. Colonel Whitmore's office was stark and quiet. A single photograph of mountains hung on the wall, cold, clear, and unwavering. She wasted no time. "Dorothy created a trust in your name," she said. "It owns the family cabin and holds funds to support your military career." I felt the weight of her words. For years, I'd been left out, erased, but this trust was my protection. A shield hidden in plain sight. Colonel Whitmore slid a thick file across the desk. Receipts, authorizations, and invoices, all signed by Helen and Victoria. Funds meant for me were used for luxury. Sauna renovations, imported hardwood floors, surveillance systems. They spent Dorothy's money on themselves, and I had no say. Then she pulled out a thin envelope. "Dorothy left this for you," she said softly. If things ever got dark, it was her handwriting, familiar and firm. I held the envelope gently, the paper worn but strong. Inside, a letter from Dorothy, words meant for a future I hadn't yet reached. She wrote of betrayal, of watching Victoria slowly take control, manipulating the family, charming neighbors while silencing anyone who opposed her. Dorothy's voice was clear. She warned me about the fight ahead. About Victoria's tactics, false claims, threats, and swift attacks. "You were never weak," she wrote. "They fear your light. That's why they try to snuff it out." I read and reread every word. Her faith in me became my anchor, a reminder that even when alone, I carried the strength of those who believed. Colonel Whitmore watched me closely, then leaned in with a serious look. "Victoria won't back down. She's already begun her retaliation." I nodded, feeling the weight of the coming storm. This was more than family drama. It was a battle for my name, my life, and my future. With the letter pressed close to my heart, I prepared for the fight ahead. I printed every document, made copies, secured backups. I emailed everything to a trusted JAG officer, uploaded files to a private cloud, every piece of evidence stored and protected, ready to defend myself. Then I opened the video file Dorothy left. Her face appeared calm but determined. "Serve with your heart," she said, "but protect it with law, grit, and intelligence." Her words wrapped around me like armor. She told me not to be silent, to stand firm even when attacked, to fight not with anger, but with resolve. I felt a fire ignite within me, not loud but steady, a promise to myself. I would not disappear. 2 days later, the call came. I was summoned to the Internal Security Office. The memo was brief, cold, and precise. A complaint had been filed against me, accused of unauthorized data extraction, of mishandling sensitive documents, serious charges that could end a career, especially one like mine. I sat in that sterile room, heart pounding, breath steady. I asked quietly, "Who filed the complaint?" The officer hesitated. "Anonymous, ma'am." But the wording matched internal reports written by Victoria Hayes. The air felt thinner. The walls seemed to close in. They wanted to silence me, but I refused to be quiet. I clenched my jaw and said nothing, because if they wanted fear, they wouldn't get it from me. Not now. Not ever. I left that room with a new fire burning. That night, Ed Grayson showed up at my door, laptop in hand, eyes scanning every shadow. He had been watching quietly, carefully. "She's setting you up," he said firmly. He handed me a flash drive. "Files Victoria sent to Captain Norris last month, plans to discredit me if I became a threat." I opened the files with trembling hands. Her voice was cold, casual, and chilling, threatening to label me unfit for duty. A calculated move to ruin my reputation. But there was more to the story. Documents showing Victoria and Helen were trying to sell the family cabin to a private developer without my consent. The deal was worth over $800,000. But the trust's lock clause was triggered. The sale was frozen, legally impossible. For the first time in weeks, hope flickered. I wasn't alone. I had evidence. I had allies, and I was ready to fight back. The next day, I presented Iron Mind to a senior officer at the base. He nodded slowly, impressed. Asked for a full proposal draft. I promised to deliver it by week's end. Driving home, hope warmed me. Fragile, quiet, but real. Maybe it wasn't all for nothing, but as I pulled into the driveway, my eyes caught the lock again. A note taped to the door, sharp and cold, signed by Victoria Hayes. "Your belongings are in the shed. Please remove them by Saturday." I tried the key once more. Still no fit. No welcome. No home. Seconds later, a text arrived. I don't want to see you here again. My heart cracked quietly like frost, and I knew the battle was far from over. I knocked one last time. No footsteps, no answer. The house was silent, a fortress built to keep me out. I walked around to the back gate. It creaked like always, but the sound felt strange. Unfamiliar. Cold. Smoke rose from the fire pit. Victoria stood by the flames, tossing papers, folders, anything with my name on it. I stepped closer, voice steady. You're burning my past. She didn't turn or speak, just fed the fire again. I tried calling family mom. Dad, no answers. Their silence was deafening. They had chosen her side. I sat in my car numb. No tears, no anger, just the heavy weight of being truly alone. That night, my phone pinged. A message from Millie Johnson, our quiet neighbor from childhood. Always watching, always knowing. I saw someone at the house last night. She wrote carefully, with Victoria. Not from around here. Be careful. Something feels wrong. I replied right away. Who was it? What did you see? No answer, just silence. Then her next message came. This isn't just family drama. It's bigger than you know. Watch your back. Her words unsettled me deeply. Millie doesn't speak lightly. Her warnings carry weight. I knew I had to stay alert. The next day I met Frank at the cafe. We hadn't spoken in over a year, but he showed up, worried, tense, serious. His voice was low, almost apologetic. Victoria's meeting with a lawyer, he said, trying to strip you of any claim. Not just the house, not the trust. He paused, searching my eyes. Then he added quietly, she called you unstable. A burden, said you're holding the family back. I gripped my coffee tighter. The warmth didn't reach my hands. I realized then it was no longer about property. It was about power and control, and about erasing me from every part of their world, every place I once belonged, every memory I once held dear. But I refused to vanish. I refused to be erased, and I was ready to fight, no matter the cost. Monday morning arrived with a chill that settled deep into my bones. I sat by the window, typing slowly a formal complaint against Victoria Hayes. My hands trembled but kept moving. This was my stand, quiet but firm, the only way left to make myself heard amidst the growing silence around me. I wasn't hopeful. I was exhausted. But truth needed a voice, even if no one else would listen. Then an urgent email arrived. From Colonel Susan Whitmore, subject confidential meeting request. The message was clear and serious. Major Hayes, your presence is required to discuss your status as beneficiary of the Evelyn Hayes Trust. My breath caught in my throat. The fight was no longer just mine. It had become something bigger. I drove to the base in silence. Colonel Whitmore's office was stark quiet. A single photo of cold mountains hung there clear and unwavering like the truth she shared. She didn't waste time. Dorothy created a trust in your name, she said calmly. It owns the family cabin and holds funds to support your military career. Her words hit me hard. For years I'd been erased, left out. But this trust was my shield. Hidden, yet powerful. Colonel Whitmore slid a thick file across the desk, receipts, authorizations, invoices, all signed by Helen and Victoria. Funds meant for me were spent on luxuries. Sauna renovations, imported floors, high-end security systems, all paid with Dorothy's money. Money that was mine. Then she pulled out a thin envelope. Dorothy left this for you, she said softly. If things ever got dark. Her handwriting was familiar, steady, firm. I held the envelope carefully, the paper fragile but strong. Inside, a letter from Dorothy, words meant for a future I hadn't yet reached. She wrote of betrayal, watching Victoria slowly seize control, manipulating family and neighbors, silencing anyone who dared oppose her. Her voice was clear and firm. She warned me of the battles ahead, of false claims, threats, swift attacks, the tactics Victoria would use. You were never weak, she wrote. They fear your light. That's why they try to snuff it out. I read her words again and again. Her faith became my anchor. A reminder that even alone I carried the strength of belief. Colonel Whitmore watched silently, then leaned in with a serious tone. Victoria won't back down. She's already started her retaliation. I nodded slowly. She won't attack my record. She'll attack my name. This was no longer family drama. This was war. With Dorothy's letter pressed close, I prepared for the fight ahead. Printed every document, made copies, backed up files securely. I emailed everything to a trusted JAG officer, uploaded the evidence to a private cloud, every piece protected and ready to defend myself against their attacks. Then I opened the video file Dorothy left. Her face appeared calm and determined. "Serve with your heart," she said, "but protect it with law, grit, and intelligence." Her words wrapped around me like armor. She urged me not to be silent, to stand firm, even when attacked, to fight with resolve, not anger. A quiet fire ignited within me. Steady, unwavering, a promise to myself I would not disappear. 2 days later, the call came. I was summoned to the Internal Security Office. The memo was cold, formal. Precise a complaint had been filed against me. The charges were serious, unauthorized data extraction, mishandling, sensitive documents, all threats to end my career. I sat in that sterile room, heart pounding but breath steady. I asked quietly, "Who filed the complaint?" The officer hesitated. "Anonymous, ma'am." But the wording matched reports written by Victoria Hayes. The air grew thick and heavy. The walls seemed to close in. They wanted to silence me, but I refused to be quiet. I clenched my jaw and said nothing, because if they wanted fear, they wouldn't get it from me. Not now. Not ever. I left the office with a burning resolve. That night, Ed Grayson showed up at my door. Laptop in hand, eyes sharp and watchful, he had been quietly monitoring the situation. "She's setting you up," he said firmly. He handed me a flash drive, files Victoria had sent to Captain Norris last month, plans to discredit me if I became a threat. I opened the files with trembling hands. Her voice was cold, casual, and chilling, threatening to label me unfit for duty, a calculated move to ruin my career. But there was more. Documents showed Victoria and Helen were trying to sell the family cabin to a private developer without my consent. The deal was worth over $800,000. But the trust lock clause was triggered. The sale was frozen, legally impossible. For the first time in weeks, hope flickered. I wasn't alone anymore. I had evidence. I had allies. And I was ready to fight back. The next day, I presented Iron Mind to a senior officer at the base. He nodded, slowly impressed, and asked for a full proposal draft. I promised to deliver it by week's end. Driving home, fragile hope warmed me. Quiet but real. Maybe it wasn't all for nothing. But as I pulled into the driveway, my eyes caught the lock once again. A note taped to the door, sharp and cold. Signed by Victoria Hayes herself. "Your belongings are in the shed. Please remove them by Saturday." I tried the key once more. Still no fit. No welcome. No home. Seconds later, a text arrived. "I don't want to see you here again." My heart cracked quietly like frost, and I knew the battle was far from over. I knocked one last time. No footsteps, no answer. The house was silent, a fortress built to keep me out. I walked around to the back gate. It creaked like always, but the sound felt strange. Unfamiliar. Cold. Smoke rose from the fire pit. Victoria stood by the flames, tossing papers, folders, anything with my name on it. I stepped closer, voice steady. "You're burning my past." She didn't turn or speak, just fed the fire again. I tried calling family, mom, dad. No answers. Their silence was deafening. They had chosen her side. I sat in my car numb. No tears, no anger, just the heavy weight of being truly alone. 3 months later, I moved into a modest home just 10 minutes from the base. No security gates, no luxury finishes, just peace. Quiet, steady peace. A garden I watered myself. A coffee mug that never disappeared. Silence that didn't sting. And a desk with Dorothy's Air Force badge above it. Iron Mind was no longer just a dream. It had trial funding through the Air Force Resilience Directorate. I ran weekly sessions with junior officers. For the first time, my voice carried weight. I started therapy with Dr. Judith Miller, a military psychologist who didn't shy away from pain. She told me, "They didn't break you. They broke themselves trying to break you." Victoria was reassigned, stripped of her medals. Mom texted once, "I'm sorry." I never replied. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reunion. Friends like Frank and Ed became my family. No blood ties, no obligations, just presence. When I burned the old letters, it wasn't spite. It was making room. One afternoon, a box arrived from the cabin. Inside, wrapped in Dorothy's old scarf, was my first Air Force badge engraved on the back, "Shape the world. Don't let it shape you." Later that evening, an email lit up my screen, an invitation to keynote a national conference. I looked at Dorothy's picture. Her quiet smile told me I had finally arrived, not just at a place, but at myself. If my story touched you, please share your thoughts below. Your voice matters, and together we are not alone. Don't forget to subscribe and join me for more stories of strength, hope, and courage. Thank you for being here.